Wait. Hello, this is Joy Stevens show, and we are here with Joe Swanson, and we are going to be talking about teleportation today. So it's going to be an exciting topic. We've got the math and the formulas, and he's going to walk it through it, and he's going to keep it high level and also at a level that the rest of us can understand. So thank you so much for being here, Joe.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go right to the PowerPoint here to get started. And this is on teleportation and portals. Okay. Just did something strange on the screen. And what I'm doing is I'm talking about a document. Well, talking about a document based on this is based on the U.S. Air Force teleportation physics study that was published in 2003 and it was released to the public in 2004. And if you take that big number that's up there that I've got up there right now, AFRL, that's the call number for calling it up. And you'll find that many sites will have that available, but they'll be charging. And I got this off of the government site originally because it was free. What they did is they overviewed options for teleportation. And they looked at Star Trek because everyone knows about Star Trek, you know, beam me up Scotty type stuff. And then they looked into quantum entanglement, vacuums of space-time, changing timelines, and psychic beams. Those were the 5 different things that they covered. Now I'll cover a few examples of these things as we go on that aren't covered in the document, but have been used. Star Trek, you know, it was considered not viable. There is no science to support it, and there isn't any support for it in the mathematics. Everyone's kind of heard of Einstein's theory of relativity and all that stuff. Well, an engineer called Charles Steinmetz wrote a book, 4 lectures on space-time and relativity, and in that book he contained all the math for everything, including time travel and teleportation and just everything you can think of. Anything related to high-tech flight without normal power means, anti-gravity. It's all in his book. And we'll go on. Quantum entanglement. They researched this and they decided that it was good for telecommunications. In other words, you have someone on planet A and someone on planet B, and they're quantum entangled, and you can talk to them. But they're also using it currently. They're developing what they call quantum computers, which means that it's a different form of programming that you say, hey, I want to find out about this. You know, does this program work? And everything comes back to you as to how to do it, type of
So when
thing.
you're dealing with the quantum entanglement, are you dealing with different time zones and different time speeds? And
No, it's like quantum entanglement is here now. And so if I was in Zeta Reticuli and wanted to talk to you now, I'd use quantum entanglement to send my message or communicate with you.
okay, so it's okay.
Does that explain it to you? Yeah, it's really strange stuff. Vacuum of space-time. They looked at this as for 0 point energy, and they actually discovered this back in 43 with Project Rainbow and the Philadelphia experiment. You may have heard of that. The Philadelphia experiment is where they took a ship, they tried to make it invisible to radar. They didn't care about light; they were looking at radar, and the ship became invisible to light, and it traveled 600 nautical miles in 10 minutes, which is really something. I look at it as there is dimensional travel. It's outside of our space time reality that we're in now, and that's why they had people end up in the decks. And after one of the trips, the sailors went to a local bar for a drink, and one of the guys was drinking and pulling the glass up to his, the beer mug up to his hand and up to his mouth, and the waitress saw that the beer mug was going up to his mouth and going back down again. But she didn't see the hand that was doing it. And so that may have been kind of the start of the Invisible Man type of stuff that they were talking about. Other people knew about this. Francis Bitter was the magnetic physicist that came up with it in the 1940s, late 30s, 1940s. Eric Dollard was a researcher that was hired by RCA and the Navy to investigate all magnetic and electrical functions, tests and experiments and whatever, from about the 1600s on out. And so he had this big lot that he worked in and he played in it. And I'll get more into that, but you can look up Eric Dollard on YouTube. And then Bill Lear, who designed the 8-track tape player and the Learjet, uh, just before he died, he was giving a lecture to some engineers in aerodynamics and stuff like that. And he said, what's going to be the next thing in star and travel? And it's going to be teleportation. And at that time, he said that they had one of the devices that they had was you could walk into a telephone booth. And remember that telephones at that time were dial telephones.
Right.
So to get the number correct, it took a lot of work, a lot of concentration. And he said you could get in there and you can dial this like 20 or 30 digits number string for where you were, and then dial the 20, 30 digit number string for where you wanted to go.
Wow.
And it would take you from that uh, phone booth. And this is when they actually had phone booths still,
Sure.
from that phone booth to another phone booth. And he said you could go from New York to Los Angeles type of deal. And that may be similar to the experiments that created uh, the basis for the movie The Fly.
Right.
And okay, go on.
I believe my grandfather knew Bill Lear, and
Okay.
he had a daughter, and just a fun point of reference that her name was Krista, and then her middle name was Shanda Lear.
Okay, well, Hal Puthoff back in the late 60s became the chief engineer for a lot of the high energy projects that the military industrial complex did, CIA, NASA, and Air Force and Navy and whatever. And he wrote down the formula for teleportation. And right now, what you're seeing on the screen is what he wrote down for his formula. Uh, I will let you know that it's basically a tangent wave function, and there's some minor dimensions that are not included in this formula. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose for some reason.
Well, let me just do some talking while Joe does that. So when we were talking about the Philadelphia project, which uses the concept of teleportation, somewhat, that is the concept that the movie was based off of. Although it's a very, very loose, super loose interpretation. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, we'll go on here. The fourth option was changing timelines. And for this, they worked with the Montauk Project. And well, back in '69, or '63, I mean, they're trying to send people back in time to see if they could change time. They couldn't change time, but they could take photos of them back in time. And those photos, if they survived, they could see in the future.
Oh,
Um, but they couldn't change anything, because that's already happened in the timeline. Uh, and so they needed to, at that time, they needed people to be more psychically active and have more psychic abilities. And so they started looking into remote viewing, and they started the SRI project on remote viewing. And
the Satanically Ritually Abused project was started under this program?
no, no, SRI is Scandia Research Institute. And so they started that, and they decided that while that was good, it wasn't good enough, and they wanted more control. And then they started something called the Gateway Experience. And people who went through the Gateway Experience were used in the Montauk Project. And I was one of those people that was used in the Montauk Project. And they've had other projects similar to it. Portal teleportation, there's the US patent number for it. I believe that's still held classified, but I'm not certain because looking at the number of it. And I covered about the 1960s, the original movie The Fly in 58. And I talked about Eric Dollard, and he had some equipment that he was supposed to make sure it was electrically proper to specs, but he was not supposed to turn it on, and it looked like a teleportation system from The Fly. And I told you about Bill Lear speaking about this just before he died in 1978. And after the Montauk Project, there were rumors of a teleportation room that would take you to a base on Mars, go into a room somewhere out on the West Coast. And you'd open the door and close the door behind you, and then open the door on the other side and be out on Mars.
And that's what
Uh,
that was the experience for you when you,
no, that wasn't my experience. My
okay,
experience was something else.
okay,
Uh, this was after my experience.
okay.
And, in the US, the patent I listed up there is they're typically held for 50 years. So because of the release date on that patent, it was probably originally filed in 1936. And that's around the same time that Charles Steinmetz did his 4 lectures on space-time and relativity.
Okay,
To
why did they get a 50-year patent when the patents I have are for 20 years?
The patents you have are for 20 years. They used to be 35 years. And they could keep something classified in the US for 50 years.
Oh, it's the classification. Oh, that's why my grandfather's stuff was classified for so long that he did for the military.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's 50 years supposedly. In
That,
fact, when I got out of the military, I had to sign in order to get out, I had to sign a 50-year NDA. So, what I'm talking about is after the 50 years I got out.
right.
And in my NDA, if I saw anything that was in public domain, I could talk about it earlier than the 50 years. Okay, then going down, uh, the final method that they talked about is the most energy efficient is the psychic means. Now there's different levels that you can do this at. One is astral travel, another is astral projection, and another is basically a form of telekinesis, where you just physically in your body, full body, full on, you disappear from point A and you reappear at point B. But in order for that to work, you had to have been at point B before that. Uh, and that's why I say you need to be there once. And these can all be triggered with certain frequencies in the brain. You may want to, if you're looking for doing some of this, there's books on the subject, and you can also look up the Monroe Institute and some of the tapes that they offer to trigger the mental states like this. Uh, there's an interesting serendipity that happened. Uh, and I find it interesting because I knew back in the 70s that the physicists were working with either 11 dimensions of space time or 13 dimensions in space time. They didn't know which. It depended on how you viewed your dimensions. Uh, for me, I was looking at dimensions based on force, and I could do either 11 or 13 based on force vectors. Um, the neurobiologists now believe that our brain is organized as an 11 dimensional matrix. And I find that interesting because if you have 11 dimensions space time and you have an 11 dimensional matrix, that means our brain can access anything in space time.
Right.
Thank you. That's the end of it.
That's
You got any
great.
questions? Any more questions?
Yeah, can you take the screen down
Yes, I can.
and
Give me
if the audience has any more questions, they can feel free to email me at stjoystevens@gmail. And I do regular interviews with Joe. There are already 2 posted on this site. And we covered his time and space. And also we covered how to remote view. So those are both really interesting, and you might want to check those out as well. So I'm going to ask you some questions about, um, we're going to go back to the Invisible Man and the hand and the beer.
okay.
Was there an article in the newspaper, or there was a lot of gossip
Yeah,
about that,
it was
or?
it was published about a riot or something started by this event happening in the newspaper in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. So it turned into a
So
big event.
and that would be somewhere around 1942, 43 era.
Wow, they
Probably
would have had
40.
nowhere to.
My guess is 43. You're going to find it. I don't know when it's going to be in 43, but I know it was happening in 43. That's when they ran the project. They also terminated the project because of the bad results to the people, you know. But
Right.
Tesla knew that it was going to be harmful to people, and he told them that. Bittner had been told that it would be harmful to people or living organisms, actually. And so, but they still went ahead with it anyway. You know, military intelligence.
Yeah.
It's an oxymoron.
So I don't know, like, what other questions do I have? So when you were addressing the formula, you said there's some other variations. Does that depend on like the environment?
Yeah, the formula variations that they had there were a 6 dimensional formula, and I really think in order to do it accurately, you have to have more dimensions than that. Uh, the
Oh,
the more accurate formulas that they work with will work at it with an aperture at each end and how big that aperture is. So you got you're here in this point in space time, and you want to be over. Okay, you're here and you want to be over here. I'm looking at the screen so I get my hands right so you can see them.
right,
And this point over here has a different XYZ location than the point over here. And so you program that in. You program the aperture, how big it is on each end and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to do the portal to portal type thing. Like, what I was talking about there was something you might see in, it's slipped my mind now. Sliders, the TV series Sliders. And what is actually easier to do is the portal thing where the portals are already there and you just link up to them. And that is what you saw in Stargate, you
okay,
know. And so those are the types of things like that. And when you just think about doing it you just move instantly from this space to that space, like telekinesis type of deal. Only, like one of the Russian telekinesis experiments, they wanted a pencil inside of a glass. Well, they weren't specific on what they told the person who was doing the telekinesis of the pencil inside of the glass. And they had wanted the pencil sitting inside the glass. And what they did is have the pencil through the glass.
Oh, wow.
You
Right.
know, so a lot of the stuff, if you're going to do it psychically, you have to be very specific. And the images that you form have to be very precise.
So like I've heard there's a woman named Jessie Zaboda, and she was picked, her grandmother was one of the mothers of darkness, which is a witch.
Oh,
And
okay.
she she was picked to be her successor, and which I've heard her talk about it on YouTube, etc. And she, as a child, was brought as her grandmother killed somebody and watched, because they apparently have to kill people. But as part of her training, they had her manifesting different like things, and she could manifest, like, apparently, as unbelievably as it sounds, like various different like weapons, etc. So
Mhm.
is that, I mean, is that like
If we
tapping
if
into
we
this
take this, if
dimensional
we
psychic stuff, or like what is that?
let me take this a little bit further. In the Montauk Project, whatever you could think and conceive strongly in your mind, like let's say
They're
you
just
thought,
printing it out, which is different because they're using technology.
yeah, in the Montauk Project, if you could conceive of an image of a chair, let's say, and you could make it very precisely, you could do gilt carvings on it, whatever. If you could be very precise and make that chair real to you in your mind,
Right. They're watching your mind with electronic like stuff.
yeah, then
And
they
then they're
take that, they
printing.
feed it into their IBM 360 computer that they had at the time.
Right.
Then they use that data and they use Pascal to convert that data into images to display on the screen. And if the image was strong enough that they could display it on the screen, then they went into they replayed it into the coils and the coils were over a mist, and the chair would form in the mist, and you could actually reach in and pull out the chair, and you'd have the chair.
Wow.
So that was part of the Montauk Project also. Montauk Project had a whole range of things that they were covering. Uh, Besides, looking at alternative timelines because they wanted to change the timeline to some weird ass stuff, and
Is this
they
the Montauk project when they were using the equipment from the airport and they had to shut the airport down because they only had one piece of this equipment, or was that a different project?
well that's part of the Montauk Project that I was in. But I was remote viewer for the Montauk Project from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and during my remote viewing time, they used the radar at the international airport, which was about a mile away from where I was.
Right.
And they ran the frequencies from the radar beamed at me to sync my brain up with what was going on a Montauk Island.
Oh,
So because they were using the radar for that purpose, they
right.
couldn't have any air flights in to the international airport. So the whole international airport shut down for each of my visits.
Wow. And I'm sure they have more equipment now and different equipment, but
Yeah.
I guess I think it's interesting, and everyone should kind of realize that the stuff that Joe's talking about actually happened kind of a long time ago. And so the
Yeah,
stuff,
that was 1983.
right,
That's a long time ago.
yes, 83, I was like 10.
Yeah.
So, it's like you've got this stuff going on. Where are we now? Do you know what I'm saying? Because, and then there are people that are under lifetime NDA. So did they change that whole system? Because I've heard of people under lifetime NDAs.
Yeah, if I had completed a 20 and back, I would have been under a different NDA, because with the 60 and 3, they didn't think I covered anything like that, like I did. And the 60 and 3 was kind of interesting because we built the base for L5, Lagrange point 5. They were using up until China decided to get into space. And then the base was moved. And if you recall, there was a time there when we had this slow moving asteroid between the Earth and the moon. And as it was moving, that was when they were moving the base. And they had to do that before China got really big in outer space.
Wow. Well, that is some
That
heavy.
was that base was 2,500 foot long.
Wow.
Like 2 aircraft carriers back to back.
Right. A lot of people can live in 2 aircrafts. So,
Yeah, yeah. And the people who were doing that were on one form of a 20 and back. And on that form of the 20 and back, uh, they would spend a couple months up in space, and then they'd spend 2 weeks in R&R, and they go on that cycle. And the R&R was limited to Australia, New Zealand, and Japan at that time.
interesting.
And you had no more contact with anyone in your family or your friends. You were given a different name. And then when you get out of a program like that, you're given another name besides so that they can't track you.
Right. The invisible men that are out
Yeah.
there. And I also like sort of wonder and think about, there's all this quote, buzz around the word human trafficking and everything. And people like to talk about women and then children, and then it's like men don't exist. And that really kind of gets on my nerves, where some of these men are probably sent to space or working underground or used to be assassins, or who knows what is going.
Yeah. When I did my 60 and 3, I was listed as missing in action in Vietnam. I never went to Vietnam. That
Right,
was in 72.
right. Your mom got the letter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
After I'd gotten home and married.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing your mom knew you were okay. Sort of.
Yeah, we came back from the honeymoon and she said, "What do you want me to do with this?" And I said, "Throw it out. It doesn't mean anything."
Right.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
your mom sounded amazing. So,
sure.
well, that is some interesting stuff, Joe. And um, we just want to, learn and keep learning. And
Mhm.
we'll do another show soon, hopefully, on what topic are we going to do?
Human-made UFOs.
Ooh, so human-made UFOs. Thank you so much. And um, everybody invent, imagine, and ask the Most High what's true. And we all hope to be a blessing and make the difference that we want. So we just thank you so much, Joe, for making a positive difference in my life and in so many others. And who we just ask that the creator will help and bless anyone that needs to find this show to uncover whatever it is about themselves or the world that they need to know, or the universe. So, and we do want to, I say, when you do your prayers, do them for in all times, in all lives, past, present, and future, and all dimensions. And with that, I'm going to say blessings and later.
Bye.